Everybody, it's Sue here, Sue Crooks. Lovely to see you all today and watching our LoveBiz training and development workshop on replay. So we have the room full today as well with people watching live, which is great to see, a very popular one today with our wonderful expert, Wendy Garcarz. Now, Wendy is a multi-award-winning coach. She supports independent business owners to help them to thrive. And that's actually one of the names of our table cards if you come to in-person events, thriving. So it's great to have her with us today. And if you did come to International Women's Day event, you'll have heard Wendy speak. And wow, what a speaker she is as well. I can't wait to introduce her to you. And she's going to share a little bit about herself and then go into our workshop today, which is on pricing strategies, which is something I think we all need if we are a business owner. Otherwise, we could get things very, very wrong. So Wendy, hello there. Thank you so much for giving us your time today.
Hi, everybody. Lovely to see so many faces here today, some of which I know very well and some of which I've only seen on Zoom before.
So it's great. That's the beauty, isn't it, Wendy, of bringing people together on an online workshop, because you could call in from anywhere in the world and you could still attend and you can still ask those questions and still learn. So it's fabulous. So now I'm going to hand over to Wendy to do her introduction and to start today's theme of our workshop. Over to you, Wendy.
Thanks very much. So yes, I am an award-winning business coach, business strategist and futurist. When I was choosing the topic for today, one of the things that I wanted to do was get people to look at profitable pricing strategies, because in my experience, it's one of the things that we tend to be very passive about. So lots of things in our business we're quite proactive about. We do marketing very proactively. We do networking very proactively. But when it comes to pricing, we're a bit passive about it. And the difficulty with that is that if you're not in charge of your pricing strategy, it won't deliver what you want it to. So I wanted to put together a workshop that gets you really to think about what your attitude is towards pricing and then give you some simple tools and techniques you can use to improve on that. The reality is that all business is about profit. And if it's not, you shouldn't be in business. Even if money doesn't drive you, it is an essential component of your business. It can't survive and it can't thrive without it. So what I want to do today is get you to think about what profit means to your business, not just the quantity of it, but as an entity, what it means. So that's going to be my presentation. I'm going to take you through the slides and then happy to answer any questions. And there's also a download with this. So there's a little handout with a formula on it that you can use too. So I'll answer any questions when we come to the end. So I'm just going to start to share my screen so that you can see my slides. Right, so as I say, it's really about profitable pricing strategies. And I do this work both as a business consultant and a business coach for the Wendy Effect, but also it's one of the key things that we do in the Micro Business Growth Club too. And it's getting people to understand what their approach to this is and how to do it better, really. The importance of pricing strategy for SMEs, the first question people ask me is, I'm really too small. I don't really need a pricing strategy, do I, if I'm a small business? And the answer is absolutely yes, you do. And the reason for that is that it covers 5 core elements of your business and your business success. It's linked directly with your business performance. It is a measure of your performance. It's also a measure of financial control, so that if you're knowing your numbers, you're more in control. And it's also a measure of your success. businesses are not charities. They have to make a profit. If they're going to succeed and thrive, they have to make a profit. I do a lot of work with Macmillan, you know, one of the biggest, probably well-known charities in the country. They make a profit. It's what you do with that profit that's important. So I want you to sit back and think about, as we go through the slides, I want you to challenge yourself on the questions that I pose. What do you do as a result of that? How do you respond to some of the issues that we're going to be talking about it? And the mantra that I'm going to use today is, if you can't measure it, then why are you doing it? So all of this is not only measurable, you can work it out, you can evidence it. So I'm going to be talking you through these systems and processes, and I want you to challenge yourself what you've got in place and where the gaps are. So the 5 core things that a pricing strategy should do for your business is that it should help you to work out your cost structure and your profit generation. So this idea about knowing your numbers is about understanding that profit can only be generated if the money you bring in covers all of your costs, and I mean all of your costs. So that is about understanding what all your overheads are, what your fixed, what your variable costs are, but also what the hidden costs are. So I'm working with a business at the moment, manufacturing business, that had got a high staff turnover. And when we analysed where their profit was going, because their profit had been reducing over the last 2 years, when we analysed that, it was the high staff turnover that was doing that. The amount of downtime that they have, the amount of advertising costs that they were spending, the additional support that their HR was having to give to their managers around this high staff turnover that they were having, had a real cost to the business, and it impacted on the profit. So it's getting you to understand all of your costs, the ones that you can clearly see, but also the ones that are hidden in there that draw money away from the business without you necessarily realising it. The second element of this is your value perception. So it's about how you appear to your customers. And so your customers need to see you as where's money well spent. And they can only do that if you work on this little formula. So they will only spend money with you if they trust you, and they will only trust you if you are the right blend of reliability and delight as far as they're concerned. So if you are not delivering consistent service or consistent products regularly in a way that they can absolutely trust you to do that, and if you are not ticking all of their boxes in terms of exactly what they're looking for that product or service, then you will struggle in that value perception. And if they don't think you're a good way of spending money, they won't spend money with you. So this element of your business is directly linked with your ability to create a good pricing strategy that generates the right profit for you. And I'm going to be going through that a little bit as well. All of us operate in a competitive landscape. We have to be able to sell our stuff regardless of who else is out there in terms of who's in competition or who we are in competition with. And whilst I don't do the comparison thing because I don't think it's helpful, you can't ignore the fact that there are people in your space selling what you sell. And so it's not about understanding what you do that's the same. It's about understanding what you do that's different. Because people will buy the difference, not the sameness. And if you can't identify what your differentiator is and maximise the impact that that has in all of your marketing, then you'll struggle to stand out from the crowd, and you won't be able to sell your stuff. So one of the things that I get people to do is understand, first of all, their competitive landscape. So who are they up against? What do they do that you don't, and vice versa? Because once you have that information, you can make the choice of whether you are marketing to a target market or whether you're niching. Now, lots of people talk about this in terms of their pricing strategy, but the reality is if you are a target market, that's great, and you will go for volume sales if you are marketing to a target group. But if you're niching, if you're going for something highly specialized, highly targeted, highly tailorable, then that will be worth more profit to your business. That's just the way it works. You can charge a premium for niched services in a way that you can't for target market services. So it's about helping you to understand where you're going to sit, what you're going to do, and then turning that into profit. And I really want to make this point, because if you look at social media and if you listen to lots of the gurus around marketing and stuff, they will kid you that everybody needs to niche. But some businesses get on perfectly well not niching. And it's a lot of work if actually you don't need to. So it's about understanding your market. Your market will tell you whether you need to niche or not. And so I'm going to be talking a little bit about that, because that should influence your pricing strategy. And then finally, the last thing that I want to look at is how you maximize profits versus sales capacity. So this is your ability to deliver either your products or making your stuff or delivering your service. And the reason for that is, for lots of us in this room, we'll do an element of coaching for our business. And if we are if we're it in our business, so I'm the only coach in my business, common sense tells you that that time is limited. There's only so many people I can see. There's only so much one-to-one time that I have, because I do other stuff other than coaching. So for me, there is a balance between the profit that I make and the sales capacity that I can deliver on. And it's getting that balance right for my business and for me and for my work-life balance. So all of those things are linked with creating the right pricing strategy for your business. And no two should be the same, because no two businesses are the same. So that's what I'm going to take you through today. So let's have a look at the first bit of this then, the cost analysis and the profit margins. In order to get this bit right, so this is the way in which your prices are structured in your business, and the degree of and the amount of profit that you want to make, what your profit margin is, you need to be doing these things. The first thing is you need to be calculating your production costs. So whatever it costs to make your product or your service. And the reason I say this is, if you are making a product, if you're manufacturing something, then you'll know how to do this, because obviously it's all of those elements. It's the time, it's the raw materials, it's the manufacturing process that you add to that, it's the sales process that sits on the top of that. So it's fairly easy to do that if you're making a product. But if you're making a service, or if you are the service, if you're a coach or a therapist and it is you, then one of the things that you absolutely have to understand is the cost of your time. And your time has a cost to the business, and it's not just an amount per hour for you, because it has to be all of that background stuff that is hidden from what you do on a day-to-day basis. And you'll have heard people talk about whether you're working in your business or whether you're working on your business. So working in your business is delivering what you deliver. But working on your business are the business processes that make sure that you send invoices, that you get paid, that you do the training that you need to keep up to date. It's all of those things. And if you haven't costed those in to your time in terms of what you cost the business, then essentially that money will have to come from one place, and it can only come from one place, and it will come from your profit. So having an accurate idea about your time means that when you're calculating production costs, you're charging enough for your time to be able to do that. The overheads and operational expenses that you have are easy because they're tangible. You'll have records for those. So that's the easy bit of this. but the calculating your time is a little bit more complex, and I will talk you through that right at the end. So once you've done that, once you've calculated your production costs and you know what your time is worth, and you know what your overheads and your operational expenses are going to be, so that might be your heating, your lighting, your water, it might be the rent if you have to pay it. If you haven't got premises, you should still charge the business for the use of space in your house. And there is, if you speak to an accountant, there is a calculation that you can use to do that. The reason that you need to do that is that it is a valuable and a bona fide cost for your business. And so it should be put into your calculation. So once you've got that, you've got your overhead, your operational costs, you can then decide how much profit you're making. Now, every business has, every market sector has an average profit margin. And it varies. So if you're looking at retail, then the average, depending on what you're retailing, if you're looking at retail, the average profit margin is between 20 and 30%. It depends on what you're selling, but that's basically it. If you're looking at very high volume production, so for example, food, and you are manufacturing large quantities or moving large quantities, then the profit margin is going to be lower. And that's because you're selling higher volumes of it. So so retail can be anything between 15 and 20%. If you're working consultancy or you're doing coaching, then the profit margin is actually higher. The profit margin is anything up to 50%. So you can see, and all of this is in the public domain, but if you want to have a chat about it, more than happy to do that. And there's also a table that I've created, which is in my book, Come Out Fighting, that tells you what the average profit margins are for your market sector, just to give you an idea. But ultimately, this is your business, so you decide if you want to hire a profit margin, then as long as you can justify it, there's no reason why you can't charge it. But that's the sort of starting point for you, really. So once you've determined what you decide profit margin is going to be, then you need to work out exactly how you're going to get there. And that requires you to answer some questions in terms of what your time is worth, but also what you want to come out of this with. So for lots of small businesses, particularly micro businesses, one of the things that I see is people make a charge, they do the business, they make their charge, their money comes in, and whatever comes into the business, they class as, once their overheads are covered, everything else is theirs. Actually, it isn't, it's the business's. And the reason I make that distinction is that your business is an entity and it needs feeding. It needs to be fed either for new equipment or for your vehicle or for your training and development to keep you at the top of your game. It requires money to develop it. And that should be what some of your profit is used for. And so when you're starting to look at why you need this profit, some of that money has to be put aside for you to create what I would call a war chest, which is a fighting fund, really, so that when anything unexpected happens in your business, you've got profit that you've put aside there that you can invest in solving that problem or growing that side of the business or launching a new product or service. So the whole idea of the cost analysis that you do and understanding the profit margin isn't just so that you can take home a decent salary, although that is important, you need to be able to do that. But it's also to make sure that your business has funds to be able to grow it and develop it in the way that you want it to grow. And there's a really simple reason for this. You might say to yourself, oh, that's okay, my costs have stayed the same. I guarantee that they won't have. If our inflation rate, as it was, earlier on last year, was running at 10%, what that means is, even if you protect the level of business you're doing and the level of money that you're bringing in year on year, if you have a 10% inflation rate, you will be 10% worse off at the end of that year. And so you have to increase the amount of money that you're bringing in by at least the rate of inflation for you to stand still. And if you don't have a plan for doing that, and if you don't have a costing strategy that helps you deliver that, essentially year on year, you'll lose money simply by doing nothing. Just by standing still, you'll lose money. Now, the reality is I went to the garden centre this weekend. It was bank holiday. Didn't everybody go to the garden centre? And I was looking around at the prices, and I realised that in some cases, the prices had gone up 50 and 60% in some of the things that I was looking at. So if you think to yourself, inflation rate was running at 10%, I'll put things up at 10%. Cost of living rise is completely different to that, because that is on commodity specifics. So, for example, luxury items, the increase, cost of living rise, everything else will mean that prices will have shot up. They won't just have gone up by 10%. They will have gone up to 30, 40, 50%. So that beggars the question that if every other business is having to do that, and you haven't looked at your rates and you haven't changed your prices for at least the last 12 months, 18 months, in one case, a business owner I was talking to, 5 years, and you wonder why things are getting tougher, and you wonder why you're not taking as much money home. Hello, that's the reason. So when we're starting to think around these overheads, operational expenses, choosing the profit that you're going for, it is bigger than just you. It's what's happening in the broader sense of your market and what's happening in the economy. And that's why you have to do this analysis. There's no shortcut to this. You need to understand those numbers that sit behind it. Because if you can't accurately cost your time. You can't work out what your capacity is and what it's worth, and therefore your profit margin will be the first thing that starts to reduce. The last thing I'm going to say about this is this realistic capacity planning. One of the biggest questions that you have to ask yourself if you're going to sit down and do this exercise is, what am I prepared to do? So, again, speaking to different business owners, I was talking to someone who's starting to slow down a little bit now, and they want to have a bit more life-work balance. They want to have a bit more control over the time. Great, nothing wrong with that. But if that person is only willing to do 3 days of work a week, then their prices have to go up if they don't want their take-home pay to reduce in any way. Because if you're available for 5 days a week, it stands to reason that you're trying to bring X amount of money in spread over 5 days, you can charge one price. But if you're trying to bring in X amount of money and that's only spread over 3 days, your prices will have to be higher, because you're recognising that you're only prepared to be chargeable rate work for 3 of those days rather than 5. So for you to work out what your rate is going to be, your chargeable rate, you have to answer those questions honestly. What am I prepared to do? How am I prepared to do that? Am I going to go, is everything that I'm going to do going to be online to reduce my my travel costs? Or if I'm going to be doing work, am I only going to be doing that in a given geographical area? In which case, are you going to be turning business away from people who want to work with you further afield? It's your business. You decide those rules. No, and that's right that you should decide those rules. But if you're deciding those rules, there will be consequences to that in terms of what you're bringing in, what your pricing needs to look like, and what your profit margin is going to be. So this whole idea about when you sit down with an accountant and you work out what your pricing strategy is going to look like, all of these things should be in that mix. And I would strongly say, and I know this is quite controversial, if you're sitting down with an accountant who asks you none of this, get a better accountant. Because they should be pushing you to ask yourself these questions. And if they're not, what they are is a straightforward, just a straightforward accountant. SMEs need an accountant to be more involved in their business so that they can ask them the right questions and they can challenge them about some of the decisions that they make around their pricing strategy. Okay, so I've talked a little bit about market analysis and analysing those market dynamics, and this is absolutely crucial because these elements are things that you need to know about and you need to be regularly doing some sort of analysis with. And when I say regularly, I would say an absolute minimum is annually, but I do this quarterly. And the reason I do it quarterly is that stuff changes. Stuff changes in every market quarterly, not least because seasonal patterns are affected. You know, the number of people I speak to who say I'll go very quiet in the summer because, you know, people are off on holiday, they're not buying as much of their particular service or product as they would normally. So what are you going to do? You're just going to sit there for 3 months and twiddle your thumbs while everybody else is off having a nice time? You need to understand how your market patterns shift during the year, and then what you're going to do to generate more income, more profit. Or if you can't do that because it's a truly seasonal business, what are you going to do in that time that prepares for those busier times in your calendar where you can make hay while the sun shines and while you can bring more money in? So you shouldn't, what your pricing strategy should help you to do is use your time really wisely so that you're using that time to generate or prepare to generate income and profit, even when business is quieter, if that makes sense. So by marketing your, by understanding your market, the research techniques, you can understand how that works. And there's a huge amount of stuff in the public domain that will help you to do this. So your market research basics should be understanding things like what the size of your market is, what the value of it is, how much you've got now, and how much you want to increase that by. And also how your market trends have changed and how they're shifting. So all of that stuff is in the public domain. If any of you are not using or tentative about using AI, a fantastic use for AI is market research. It can help you do this because it will go off, it will pull all of this stat together, and it will bring it for you into one easy to read document. So I'm more than happy to talk you through how you do that. What you also need to be doing is identifying target customer segments. So your market will be split into customers that buy different variations of product or service. So it will either want a low level cheap as chips model, or it might want a choice a choice model where it's got lots of variables that it can pull together, or it might be right at the top of the game wanting a luxury, completely bespoke solution to their problems. All markets have every one of those elements in them. You need to decide which are the most profitable for you and the sort of service or product that you're delivering. And then you need to focus on how you address that market need. But the research that you need to be able to make that decision is out there, again, in the public domain. And some of it you'll know just instinctively because you've worked in that market, but some of it you will have evidence of because you already hold some of this data and it's in your existing business. So that data will tell you an awful lot about the buying trends in your particular market that you serve. So it's about interrogating what you already hold with the sort of historical data that you have about the customers you've already dealt with. Once you've started to do that, that will help to inform you as to whether you are going to be a generalised target market sort of business or whether you are going for niche. The difference is, and if anybody saw my, I did a post on LinkedIn and Facebook about the tips email this week, which is about this whole idea about whether to niche. And the issue is that if you are going for a target market, you might be a company that sells dog food. And if you are going out, that will be your target market. So any dog owner potentially is a client for you. However, if you have a particular product where you are servicing a need for dog owners who have mature dogs, so any dog over 7 years old that has got a sensitive tummy, that is niching. Because if you include those phrases in your marketing, when someone is searching for that specific dog food for a senior dog who's got tummy issues, maybe allergies, then you want to make sure that you come up in that search. You need to niche your business so that you're using those words in all of your marketing so that they find you when they look for that specific niche, when they look for that specific product. And guess what? If you are the first and you're selling dog food, you will probably have a range of a basic at 50p a can, or a luxury for those pampered poochies at £1.50 a can. If you've got a dog that's senior and who's got stomach issues and or allergy issues and you need to buy specialist food, you're looking at £3.50 a can. So by understanding these things, it guides you to make sure that your pricing strategy is right for the product or service that you're delivering. That's why you need to be deciding whether you are target market or niche pricing. The profit, in terms of money, the quantity of profit you make could be the same, but you'll need to be selling more if you are a target market product than if you're spending than if you are a niche priced market, because obviously you'll sell less of the £3.50 a can. And once you've started to do that, then again, the data that you hold will help you to evaluate those market trends and the demand patterns as well. And if you've got a good accountant, they'll already be talking you through what the patterns of the income that you are experiencing tell you about your market trends and the demand that your customers have within your market share. So all of this leads us on then to a value proposition. And this is when you're looking at your pricing strategy, every business has to have a value proposition. And all that means is the way that you package your product or service and take it to market. And for anybody that has done pricing strategies before, you will know that it is absolutely nothing or very little to do with how much you charge for something. And it's more about the value that you deliver for that amount of money. So, for example, if you are in the market for a sports car, you will have some choices. And you will be able to buy a sporty looking car from one of the main manufacturers for probably half of what you would buy if you wanted to buy a Lamborghini or a Lotus or one of those really high-end vehicles. The value proposition is that there will be some people who want the look but don't have the money or the wherewithal to buy that top end, but they still want some of that nice window dressing to give them the feel that that's what they're buying. And so you have the ability to do the same with your product. Are you going to be selling to a market that wants the window dressing, or are you going to be delivering that true Lamborghini experience? And if you are, what is your value proposition? You need to understand what their buying motive is, what they're going for, what their disposable income is, and that needs to shape your pricing strategy. So in order to do this, you need to understand the differentiating product or service that you have. So what's the difference between you and everybody else in your marketplace? Well, don't be under any illusion because you are it. If you have not got you at the top of your list, then you're not looking at this correctly. So I operate in amongst thousands of business coaches, but there's only one Wendy. And so I need to understand what is unique about the way that I do things. That means that I can justify the prices that I'm going out to market with. And it's part of the reason why I've just rebranded. So part of my differentiator is the Wendy effect. And people will say, I had one conversation with you and this happened. Or how do you know more about my business than I do? Well, the reality is I don't. But my approach is that I can see things because I've got more distance between you and your business than you have. I see things in a different way. I see things from a different perspective. That is a unique feature about the way I work, and that has a monetary value. So I can charge for that in the same way that you all can. You need to understand what you do differently because it has a value, a tangible value. And if you're not charging for that, then you ought to be. So that's the first stage, differentiating your product or service. Then it's about pulling those together because there'll be more than one differentiator. So your differentiating factors will be, there'll be multiple ones of them. You need to be able to understand what they all are because they're your unique selling points, the things that make you different. And then you will be able to pull those together in a brand, and that brand will have a value. And that's the delight that you create. So somebody said to me last week, I always smile when I leave having a conversation. After I've had a conversation with you, I leave smiling. That's my delight. If I watch somebody do that, if I watch them, if I watch a light bulb come on when I'm talking to them and they walk away smiling, that's the delight factor. And I'm using that to build my reputation and build that know, like, and trust so that I will work with that person. Doesn't always work immediately, but we all know sales are a long-term gain. So you don't get immediate results, but it is all about putting all of that together to create that brand value so that when that person's ready to buy, they think of you first. And then what you do with that once you've done that is you pull that together and you use that to communicate that value to your customers in your marketing strategy, in everything that you do, in the leaflets, in the lead magnets, in your social media, in the networking that you do, so that you've got that consistent message coming out time and time and time again. One of the things I talk about then, and we do quite a bit of work on this with the Micro Business Growth Club, is understanding what pricing models are. And so we haven't really talked about money or price as a unit. We haven't talked about that up to this stage. That's to tell you that if you haven't done the work that we've already talked about, you can't even get to price, because all of those other things are the component parts of price. So if you've done all of that, then we can talk price. And there are 5 basic approaches for deciding on your price. There's penetration pricing, which is if you're going into a new market and you want to win new business and increase your market share, you will go in at a lower profit level simply because what you're trying to do is buy that market share. This is a short-term strategy. You won't do it for a long period of time, but it can help you get the foothold that you need so that you start to create some social proof of the difference you make. And if you've got no customers, you've got no social proof. So penetration pricing has a really solid place and in your pricing strategy. Premium pricing then is the luxury end of your service. So this is where you are offering probably a higher degree of you time, so one-to-one time with your customer. This is the sort of Waitrose end of the service, the sort of things that people only buy on high days and holidays. So lots of people will shop in Tesco or Sainsbury's for all of their ordinary shopping, and then at Christmas or Easter they take a trip to Waitrose and they buy the special little bits that, you know, we all have that capability within our own product range or our own service range, and there will be things that we can do, the shiny services that we can do, but we need to be able to justify when it's okay for people to spend extra money on those. So we will always have this top end offering, or some people call it a high ticket price item, but we will all, or a signature program, but we'll all have the ability to do that. And you need to know what yours are so that you can build that into your profit plans. Psychological pricing then is the fear of missing out. And so this is where you are capitalizing that if you're running, for example, a masterclass, and you only have 20 places on a masterclass, or you're running an open event and there are limited tickets, then this is the way you create that fear of missing out. And it's a way of creating a justification for a significant ticket price. It's using that psychological processing that every customer has. You want to tap into that, usually at times, not all the time, but you will want to tap into that for special occasions where you want to sell something specific, or hold an event. So it's that fear of missing out. The other time where you can use this psychological pricing is for early adopters. So if you are wanting to launch something brand new to market, a new product or a new service that nobody else is doing, then your target market will be early adopters. People that love change, that love variety, that like to be the first to do anything, and are willing to pay a premium for that. Bundle pricing then is a mechanism where you might create a value ladder. So this is a ladder of your services where you will have an entry point for everybody's budget. So if somebody's got only 50 quid to spend, then you'll have an offering for that. And if somebody's got 250 quid to spend, you'll have an offering for that. And if somebody's got £1,000 to spend, you'll have an offering for that. And it's the way you bundle your services or your products to meet a specific need. Every business should have a value ladder because it means that you can always ensure that you've got something to offer everybody, regardless of what their budget is, and you don't leave money on the table. So those price points, those entry levels, are part of your, or should be part of your pricing strategy. Dynamic pricing then is something that is starting to happen more and more, and it's demand led. Lots of businesses are starting to do this electronically. So in London, the little sort of mini supermarkets that you get on most street corners. So there'll be a mini Tesco or a mini Waitrose or whatever. They are starting to use electronic pricing so that their prices vary from the times of day that people go in. So prices for things like packed lunch deals will be more expensive in a morning when commuters are going in and picking stuff up like that than they will be mid-morning when people are not around and about and doing that sort of stuff. And they're doing it electronically. Amazon do it all the time. So I guarantee you that you can do this, but you can do a search for something, and get your partner or a friend to do a search for the same thing. And if it's something that you've bought on a regular basis, the price will be different in the search that you do for exactly the same product than the search that your friend does. It's called dynamic pricing. And it's about gearing demand, it's bringing supply and demand closer together. But if you also want an example of this, Cinema World used to do this with their popcorn. So if you went and bought popcorn, either an ordinary, small, medium or large popcorn, and you went and bought that on a Wednesday, it would be a cheaper price than if you went back and bought it on a Friday or a Saturday, because all the research says that cinema goers on a Friday and Saturday are more willing to spend more on their popcorn. So that's dynamic pricing. So all of those things should be included in your pricing strategy. And if you want to create a pricing strategy for your business, these are some of the things you need to be thinking about. You need to be understanding your costs so that you can make a profit, and that profit is going to service your needs and the business's needs. You need to research your market and your customers' willingness to pay. And all of that stuff is out there in the public domain. You can access that information. You should be defining your value proposition and highlighting the differentiators so that you understand what value you take to your customers, and that's reflected in your prices. And you need to set your pricing objectives. Think about your market share and what your profit margins are going to be. Choose your pricing strategy once you've done that, and then calculate your prices. Don't calculate your prices until you've done all of the other stuff, because it won't be right. And then keep your eye on things. So test and adjust your pricing strategy. It's not set in stone. You can always go back and review it, but you should be monitoring its performance on a quarterly basis to see whether it's doing what it needs to do. Once you've got that pricing strategy, make sure you communicate it honestly with your customers through your marketing materials, your website and other channels. So lots of people say to me, I can't possibly put my prices up. My customers wouldn't pay that. Well, where's your evidence for that? Have you had conversations with them? What's everybody else doing? So, you know, don't just go on assumption. There's evidence out there. You've got data that is telling you the way to go. Use it. Stay flexible, be prepared to adjust your prices. Discounts. I do want to mention discounts before I go. I am going to say to you, discounts come directly from your profits, because a discounted service costs exactly the same to deliver as a non-discounted service. So your discount is coming from your profit, and that's really valuable to think about, because every time you give a discount, you're giving away a bit of your next holiday or the left-hand seat of your new car. You're giving away your money. So you need to understand that. You need to factor that in to any discount policy that you're doing. And any discount should be time limited. You shouldn't be giving discounts as a matter of course. By understanding the things that I've talked you through today, what you'll be able to do is monitor and review your pricing strategy so it does what you need it to do, not just for you, but for your business too. Consistency is really important. So from a customer point of view, they will trust you. Even if your prices are higher than everybody else, they will trust you if you can justify the value that you give. So your pricing is the first bit. Understanding your value and marketing that value is the main thing when you sit down and think about your pricing strategy. So I'm just going to leave it there. Let me stop me sharing that. So can you see me now? Have I got everybody back? Yes, I can see people's faces. So I know that's an awful lot to take you through. Does anybody have any questions? Let me have a look at the chat box.
Wendy, before we go into questions, what I tend to do is close our recording, because if anyone wants to ask anything a little bit confidential,
okay,
they can do that without it being recorded. So what I'm going to say now is, Wendy, thank you so much for that. Oh my goodness, I didn't know anything about dynamic pricing, but I do now. I've written so many notes. It's been brilliant. And actually, I've been writing on my board some to-do things as well while we've been listening to you.
Good.
I'd like to say a huge thank you, and we'll end our recording now. So thank you everyone for coming, and we'll open our questions shortly live into the room. Thank you, everybody.